here's your host, John Chapman.
All right, faithful, welcome to another episode of the 49ers Rush podcast. And let's be honest, how great is your week after the 49ers throttled the Patriots? It just adds another element to the Monday hump to get started with the week, whatever else. It just changes things. That's all there is to it. Now, if you are watching live, just want to give a shout out to the Countdown crews. I'm seeing they're turning out freaking awesome. What's up, Nick? Glad to be with you today. But if you're watching live, whether on Periscope or YouTube, then guess what? You see at the title, we have a special guest for you. I don't do a lot of guests. One, just because I'm a routine guy. But trying to figure out like who's a good fit and who's going to benefit our listeners and all that kind of stuff. Well, today we got a big one. Matt Barrows of The Athletic, who's been covering the 49ers for 17 years, is going to stop by and talk with us for about 20 minutes. And he's going to go in depth in some stuff I've never even heard before. So stay with us on that. But before we get to Matt Barrows, I want to talk about just some of the differences, some of the new things, new updates coming through. One, there were a lot of transactions today. Okay, the 49ers basically had 6 separate transactions. 2 new 49ers have been brought in. Haven't been able to break down any film on them, but they were both added to the practice squad. So until they get activated, we kind of have to have a wait and see approach. One of them was an offensive lineman. This was a little bit of a shock to me, because it's not like we had an injury anywhere, but once we got to who was released from the practice squad, it kind of made sense. Offensive lineman they brought in was Tony Bergstrom, and then also another defensive lineman, Willie Henry, both signed to the practice squad. Now, to make room for those players, you have to look at who was released. 4 separate players were released right off the bat. Cornerback Brian Allen, we knew it was going to come. I was surprised it didn't happen sooner, but we all know Brian Allen. He was the one that got torched in the Dolphins game. Offensive line, Cody Conway, that made room for Tony Bergstrom. Defensive lineman, Adam Schuler, who the 49ers were really, really high on. Seemed like he was a fit in the system. Don't know what happened there. He had no injury designation whatsoever. They just decided to move on from him. And then Tavon Austin, who was on injured reserve, season-ending IR. They came to an injury settlement with him. Usually when teams do an injury settlement, it's best for both. That means that he's probably getting closer to return, because we put Tavon Austin on IR before our initial 53. That meant under no situation could he ever be activated onto the active roster for the 49ers. So what teams do is they come up with basically a compromise. So he gets a little bit less money, but he gets to go and sign with another team, and he could be activated on another team. So that's the deal with Tavon Austin. Wish him the best. You know, he got injured. He had some promising things going on during training camp, and you have to think with where we were weeks 1 and 2 with the injuries to all the wide receivers, he would have had a shot to play, but the injury kind of took him out of that. Now, the 49ers get just a little bit of cap relief, salary cap relief or cash relief. It's not going to be enough to affect anything. And still to update, you know, Everson Griffin was traded today for a 6th-round pick to the Detroit Lions. Understand this. There is no money. If you go to overthecap.com, it shows the 49ers have $3 million space. If you go to Spotrac, it shows just under $3 million. David Lombardi came out today and says the 49ers are right at $100,000 cap space. $100,000. That's it for this year. You have to get a player for free. That's all there is to it. So as the trade deadline looms, unless you have a significant cut, restructuring of a deal, something along those lines. Understand, the 49ers are broke, B-R-K, broke. They have nothing. They can't buy a vowel. They're out of whatever contention it is you want. So I get it. Yes, we are used to going out and getting these players. I get it. I want those players as well. But you have no money. You are absolutely broke. And that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, I want them as well. I'm seeing some of the comments, and it didn't take very long for you guys to come up and just say, why didn't we go get this guy? Yeah, I wanted Everson Griffin too. I tweeted out a couple things. You would have had to attach a player. The Lions got him for a 6. The 49ers have 2 6th-round picks now because of the trade with Jordan Willis, which finally went through. We've signed him. He's now eligible to practice and be a part of our team. But you would have had to send a player for player with similar contracts in order for that to work. The Cowboys, even though they have a lot of cap room now, they're trying to sign Dak long term. They're basically already punting on the year. So that's why that didn't happen. Kind of take that for what you want. Jordan, what's up, man? Love it. Made it to the Countdown Crew. First time Countdown Crew. Welcome, Jordan. We only have about 5 more days till our next giveaway. So rack up those hashtag CCs. All you have to do, see you, Tim Ford. Welcome, brother. All you have to do is hashtag CC in the first minute and a half of any live video. We keep track of all those, and we just keep giving stuff away every single month, sometimes twice a month, if I'm in a good mood and Miss Chapman won't notice in the pocketbook. So that's kind of where we're at. Nick asked this: if you could sign one player at one position, who would you add? Again, you have to understand we are completely broke. Now, just looking at everything, the immediate needs that come off the clock are edge rusher, nickel corner, even though, we're getting K'Wan Williams back likely this week. And, man, if you look at what Jamar Taylor, 2 interceptions, one of them was great coverage. The other one, he kind of got a fortuitous tip drill. But you're kind of feeling a little bit better about nickel. Outside corner, we're doing relatively well. I was really, really worried about center position, but Ronis Grasu seems to have locked that down. But I would say center and edge rusher are the 2 things that concern me the most that are there. Now, let's go back and let's talk about players who should return. K'Wan Williams, Shark, is expected to be back. They announced that last week. Today is the first practice. Practice report hasn't come out yet. Any minute now, and if you guys get the practice report out, please let us know. But K'Wan Williams is huge. If you watch the Seattle game, which you probably did, one, it was hilarious, incredible game, back and forth, whatever. Tyler Lockett goes out there and just destroys. Cost me lots of money in fantasy, whatever else, that's okay. I hate the Seahawks. I hate Tyler Lockett, probably a good guy, still hate him. Tyler Lockett goes off for 3 touchdowns and just caught everything. Well, if you look at the past of Tyler Lockett versus K'Wan Williams is dominating that matchup. Twice last year, basically put the kibosh on him. So K'Wan Williams coming back this week is huge news. Huge news. Also, staying with the secondary, it is looking like Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tartt could both, if not one, if both could return. Now, this is probably good news. You need the depth there. But, man, again, I'm telling you, I want Tarvarius Moore and Jaquiski Tartt to be the starters at safety. Now, there's no doubt in the world, Robert Saleh is going to go right back to where he always goes and stick with Ward. They all love Ward, and I get that. I have no problem with Jimmy Ward. And I see you out there, Gunner. Trade Jimmy Ward in his contract. Get rid of Pettis and get an edge rusher. I would love to do that. But trading Jimmy Ward's not easy right now. That contract's not friendly. Nobody is picking up contracts. Nobody is unless they're a contender and they think they're Jimmy Ward away from winning a Super Bowl. Well, let me tell you this. No team is Jimmy Ward away because he's not the biggest asset. He's somewhat of a liability because of his contract. Pettis, same thing. Why would anybody want Pettis? Edge rushers are a premium. There are a few out there. There is still a little bit of hope. But yeah, if there was a way that we could trade Jimmy Ward and allow Tarvarius Moore to start, I would be all for it. I love that dude. Really, really do love that guy. Khalil Young, could we land Ryan Kerrigan or Aldon Smith? Hell no. No way, impossible. Ryan Kerrigan's incredible. His contract, no way in hell we could take that. Even if we unloaded Jimmy Ward, we still couldn't get Ryan Kerrigan. Aldon Smith is a part of Dallas's future plans and dirt cheap. No way they're letting him go. Even if, let's say, Dallas wanted to let Aldon Smith go, you're talking a 2nd or 3rd round pick to get him because, again, he is almost leading the league in sacks. He's playing that well. He's still not that old. Aldon, they're not going to let him go. And even if they would, I don't think San Francisco is the best place for him. I think a new start, wherever he's at's working, I want Aldon to stay there, even though I hate the Cowboys, because I want to live in a world where Aldon Smith gets it figured out and contributes. I don't think that should be for the 49ers. That's just me personally. All right, let's get to a couple clips here. Running backs. We've got a lot of running backs hurt. Raheem Mostert can't play. He's still on IR. Just put another running back on IR, Jeff Wilson Jr. After a career day, 3 touchdowns, comes out, balls out. He's injured. Tevin Coleman's been out for a while as well. Here's what Kyle Shanahan had to say on Tevin Coleman.
Hope so. I'm not sure yet, though. I mean, I know he can't go today. Be surprised if he gets out there fully for Wednesday, but I think that'll be a later in the week decision.
And we kind of saw this formula with Jeff Wilson last week. It's just rinse and repeat, right? Oh, Jeff Wilson, we'll see, gets a limited practice in. Oh, well, Jeff Wilson, we'll see, limited practice. Same thing on Friday. He goes out there and starts and lights the freaking world on fire. Kyle Shanahan is the epitome of Bill Belichick with running backs. So for all you fantasy players out there, you have to understand, you don't know what they're going to do. 3 weeks in a row, Jerick McKinnon's the leading touch snap guy in the running back, then he gets nothing. Jeff Wilson steps in, lights the world on fire. Even though we saw JaMycal Hasty look as good as he did, you sat him on the bench until the injury. Then he went in and played incredible. Conventional wisdom says this is Hasty time. Should be Hasty time. There's no doubt. Who would you rather see out there getting more carries? Tevin Coleman, JaMycal Hasty. I would bet that's a 95% JaMycal Hasty. That's who we want to see. The guy has it. Whatever it is, he has it. You know, we finished our full Patreon breakdown this morning, which was over an hour. That guy has it. JaMycal Hasty is it. Now, I get he's inexperienced. I get he's a rookie. I don't care. Get him the ball. Get him the ball. Anyway, but it looks like the running back rotation's going to be JaMycal Hasty, Jerick McKinnon, and then Tevin Coleman. Who knows? Tevin Coleman might start after not even practicing at all this week. It's kind of what's been going on. You know, I brought up the safeties earlier, and Kyle Shanahan was asked this question about Tarvarius Moore and Marcel Harris, and he even's got a pretty cool nickname for him. So here's the head coach talking about his young safeties.
I thought they played very well. You know, those guys always come in, fly around, and hit. I call them our goon squad because when they come in, they're 100 miles per hour and they're trying to run through everything, which is really fun to watch. Sometimes when you're like that, you get a little amped up and make some mistakes, and those guys limited those yesterday. I mean, they were on their stuff, they were on their reads. They never hesitated. They were a physical presence out there and didn't leave many holes in the coverage either. And then Tart and Jimmy, hoping they'll both come back this week, but they're in the same boat a lot of other guys are. I mean, we're going to try, but we really won't know till the end of the week.
There's just so many spots up in the air. And I think Kyle Shanahan loves it that way because he doesn't want the Seattle Seahawks. Step back from everything, okay? The 49ers are 4-3. Step back from the schedule. The NFC West is the greatest football in the division in the history of football right now. There's never been, past 7 weeks in the season, it's happened one time, that all 4 teams had a 500 or better record. It's it, once after week 7. That's it. And whenever you look at, you've got, 5-1, 5-2, 5-2, 4-3. It's not even like they're all at 4-3. The 49ers, they have a 45-point positive point differential. They're dead last place in the NFC West. This division is incredible. Push all that aside. If you circle one matchup, one game out of 16 for the 49ers to start the season, doesn't matter the situation. This game is it. This game, win at Seattle. Now, COVID, it complicates things, right? They don't have their fan base there. 49ers are playing great on the road. We're winning every road game out there. This is the game. If you could pick one game for the 49ers to win going into this season, you would say win at Seattle. Win at Seattle. Number 2, probably win at Los Angeles, right? Road victories in the division change things. The 49ers are 2 games out of first place. You go beat this team, guess what? 1 game out of first place, and you still have, you're a week 8. We're at the midway point, man. We still got our bye week coming. We're good. Not where we want to be at 4-3. Our expectations are higher because we're a quality football team, even with 19 starters out. This game is huge. Therefore, Kyle Shanahan's not tipping his hand at all. I guarantee you this. We're going to get the least amount of audio clips this week as we will all year because Kyle Shanahan doesn't want Seattle to get anything. And probably the same for the Seattle Seahawks coming the other way, which I don't want to watch a press conference with Pete Carroll. I can't stand people that chew with their mouth open. That chewing with the gum, good Lord. I don't know, man. He should have been corrected a long time ago. Anyway, now this week we've got a lot for you. Tomorrow we'll have a couple film clips. We'll talk through the defense, offensive ranks, which I've got a lot of that stuff for you guys. I've been compiling a lot of stuff, which is interesting. A lot of telling news. As again, we're 7 weeks in. But what I want to do real quick is I want to thank our sponsor. Then I want to get to Matt Barrows, because he's got a book out. It's incredible. He's going to go talk through. We're going to talk Joe Staley. We're going to talk Frank Gore. We're going to talk some Kaepernick, Alex Smith stuff. So much. It's incredible. This is probably one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. But before we get to that, I do have to thank our sponsors, MyBookie. Here we go. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know the NFL and the NBA, they're back. They're in full swing, which can only mean one thing. It's a winning season at MyBookie. I don't know about you guys, but for me, a game is 10 times more exciting whenever I'm putting my money on it. And if you've been betting with us, we've been doing very, very well so far this year. So stick with us. Bet on it. Use all the knowledge that we have, and let's be successful. And here's the deal. Right now, they have a $100,000, you heard me, $100,000 super contest for only $10 entry. $10. You can win all that money. They're giving away $5,000 in cash prizes every 4 weeks. You would be crazy not to jump in there with all your knowledge. $10 to win thousands. Sign me up. You too can make up and sign up at MyBookie. And here's the deal. Use promo code 49ers, 49ERS, to claim your 100% deposit match all the way up to $1,000. That means you put in $100, they're going to give you $100. Rollovers will be included in that, and if you have questions, please call their customer service. They'll help you with that. But the NFL, NBA, MLB, they've got it all on tap. It's never too late to get started, and if you've wanted to jump in with us, now's the best time. Head to mybookie.ag, promo code 49ers, and they're going to double your initial deposit. Thanks for the support, MyBookie. All right, so the betting lines have already opened up this week. The 49ers are 3-point dogs. Very similar to last week. We were 2.5-point dogs, underdogs at the start. How'd that turn out? Now we're 3-point underdogs versus Seattle. And I get it. Their offense is playing out of this world. Their defense also played out of this world. Here's one little thing I found out today. The Seahawks, okay, again, I think they're 5-1, right? They played 6 games. They have only forced the team to punt 4 times this year. 4 punts. The Seattle's defense has forced 4 punts in 6 weeks. This game's going to be weird as hell. It's got the second highest over-under pointed by 54 points. That's what they're seeing. And again, would not be shocked whatsoever if there's going to be overtime. Now, obviously, we're going to have our full scouting report episode. That's coming Friday or Saturday. But let's change tunes just a little bit here, and let's jump to Matt Barrows. Dude's incredible, writes for The Athletic, 17 years, your number one beat writer. Here we go. Here's my interview with Matt Barrows that I did yesterday. All right, we've got a special treat for you guys today. With us is a guest, Matt Barrows. You all know him. One of the best. He's covered the 49ers for 17 years now. And as a fan, as somebody that follows the 49ers, you always get the games, you get all the stats, you get the fun stuff. But what would it be like to be a fly on the wall? What would it be like to get all the access behind the scenes? Well, Matt has done that for us. He has an amazing new book out called If These Walls Could Talk. Matt, thank you for your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for taking the time to talk about this book. It's basically a book about the last 20 years of the 49ers. I figure that there's been a lot written about the glory years. These years, glory wouldn't be the word I would use. It's been up and down, and a lot of people think that we're now in an era where it's going to be up for a while. Certainly not bouncing around, yo-yoing like the team has done to this point, and there seems to be some stability at the top. So I think that's probably one of the big takeaways. That was Joe Staley he wrote the foreword for this book. That was his takeaway, is that he doesn't see the roller coaster ride happening very much longer because of the two guys in charge of the organization.
You bring up Joe in that forward, and one, it's incredible. But he talked about how there are 2 times that Joe Staley ever cried on the football field. Could you walk us through just briefly kind of what that was like, reading that and talking with Joe as you know him personally, how passionate he is and what it means for those 2 special instances, and they were special, to kind of bring that out of him, that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, that's not how he wrote the forward initially, but I remember, I forget when we talked about it. And so I sort of suggested to him, it would be really effective if you began it this way. There were 2 times that I ever cried on the football field, and these are the 2. And they were both right after the Super Bowl losses. And I think that encapsulates just how special these guys felt those teams were. There's a big similarity between the 2011-2012 team and the 2019 team. They both had a sense in the locker room that they were destined for something special. Guys on both of those teams, and that's why Staley is such an interesting character, really, because he was in both locker rooms. But guys on both of those teams just recognized it at the time that they were going through a unique season, a special season. They really loved their teammates. I think that was a theme. And so when it didn't happen, it's just crushing. You just don't ever. I don't think these guys ever foresee that possibility that, wait a second, we could lose this game. It just wasn't happening that way. I mean, in both instances, they were winning so handily, crushing the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs both years, really. They were on a roll in both cases. And so it's sort of just this abrupt ending. Like all of a sudden you're walking down the street and the sidewalk ends and there's nothing there. I can't relate to it at all, but you can start to see why they're just so crushed after these losses, because they don't ever see them losing in these games.
Yeah, and I think, staying with that first Super Bowl loss, later on in the book, whenever you're going through the first Super Bowl loss, you talk about, you're interviewing Joe Staley, and he says it was so hard to see Ray Lewis after the game out there dancing and parading around, because he was the reason why the 49ers were having so much offensive success. And talk about just a tale of 2 wins with the ending, because Ray Lewis gets to walk away with all the glory, despite the fact being such a major liability for the Ravens during the entire game.
Yeah, that was the irony. And the other irony is that Ray Lewis was complaining about the game the entire time for years afterward about the big delay that happened that he says allowed the 49ers to get back into it. And the 49ers point is that we were running our offense through the middle of the defense because we knew that Ray Lewis was just not able to move laterally like he used to. So, yeah, Ray Lewis had a tremendous career. That was not a great game for him. He probably should have called it quits earlier than that, but more power to him. He got away with it, and he got an extra Super Bowl ring. I mean, that's just the icing on the top of the cake of a great career. But the 49ers definitely cringe when they hear Ray Lewis complaining about the blackout.
It gets me fired up just thinking about it. And if there's anybody else besides Joe Staley that is one of the most beloved 49ers of all time, Frank Gore, who's still playing somehow, makes no sense whatsoever. And you go into great detail, probably one of my favorite chapters of the book, where you're talking about Scott McLaughlin and how in the world you go in through the Wonderlick of Frank Gore, you go into the 2 ACLs, you go into the shoulder, you go into all these things. Help us understand. It still baffles me how Scott McLaughlin nailed that evaluation with all the empirical evidence that was out there that was saying, stay away. What happened here, and how was he so right when everybody else was so wrong?
Yeah, imagine if the 49ers drafted a Frank Gore type in 2021. I mean, people would be going off the walls. Twitter would be on fire. What, a guy with 2 ACLs and shoulder issues? Don't touch him. But McLuhan had been a regional scout for the Seahawks back when Gore was a freshman. So that was the Miami team that had McGahee. It had all sorts of talent on that, upper class talent too. I mean, these were experienced collegiate players. And McLuhan rolls through there as part of his, natural kind of tour through the state of Florida, checking out Florida State, checking out Gainesville, all of that, goes through Miami. And he realizes that Gore, this freshman, is better than all of these upperclassmen. And of course, that precedes all of the injuries that he had, but that always stuck with Scott. And so he knew that the injuries were going to lower his draft value. And he knew, there were other things too. You mentioned the Wonderlic. He had gained weight his senior season. He was up around 235, which to me seems ridiculous for Frank Gore. He's always been 210, 214, maybe at the heaviest since he was with the 49ers. And so that's sort of how I imagine him. But he was kind of fleshy and just somebody you wanted to avoid. But the recollection that McLuhan had, and I think that's important, that now he's not GM at this point. He's VP of personnel, but he's in charge of the 49ers personnel department. But the fact that he had been a regional scout, that he had been through all these schools and seen these guys, gave him insight that Frank Gore, when he was healthy, was special. And so if he ever got healthy, we would have a Pro Bowl type of running back, and that's the gamble that he made. He gave Gore his word that if you're still there at the start of the third round, remember this is 2005, so the 49ers had the first pick in every round. If you're still there, we're going to take you. And frankly, Gore was skeptical. He's like, no, I'm going to be taken way before then. People are telling me I'm not even going the first. And McLuhan knew with all those blemishes that you listed that he wouldn't be taken, and the rest is history. But it was kind of sticking to your gut instinct, I think it was, with McLuhan. And he's still running. And I think he had 60 yards the other day, which isn't huge, but for someone who's been in the league as long as him, that's an achievement.
And to average 4 yards to carry with this Jets team.
Right, with the Jets.
That's incredible. That Frank the Tank, man, he lives on forever. Another key transition or pivotal moment in 49ers history was the transition that happened unexpectedly, Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick. Now, nobody wants to ever lose their job to injury, which we're kind of seeing that unfold currently with the new rookie quarterback for the Chargers and Tyrod Taylor. But I never knew that Alex Smith and his wife, Elizabeth, were battling, kind of talking back and forth if he should play the following week after he received a concussion. That was news to me. I'd never heard that story. Can you kind of walk us through just a little bit about what was happening on the back end for Alex Smith and his family?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. There was a lot going on behind the scenes there. Smith got hurt in that Rams game, which ended in a tie. And then he was experiencing symptoms throughout the next week, which led up to the Chicago Bears game. And of course, that was the game, Monday night game, that Colin Kaepernick had his coming out party. I remember that game thinking that, maybe they'll run Kaepernick a lot, maybe some short passes. And we'd seen him in practice, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, he was a guy that would, on a little 5-yard out, just fire the ball at 100 miles an hour and break the receiver's fingers. I mean, he didn't have a lot of nuance to him when we saw him in practice. But in that Bears game, he looked like Dan Fouts. I mean, feathering passes, he looked great. And so the expectation from Smith was that after the Bears game and before the Saints game, a game in New Orleans, he would go through all of his tests and would be, reinserted back into the starting lineup. Well, according to this is all from Smith, he felt as if the 49ers really dragged their feet on giving him those tests. Remember, it's a process. You have to pass a series of post-concussion tests. And it was all brand new back then, too. This is 2012. This might have been the first year that they were doing that. But his sentiment was that they were doing it on purpose to basically buy themselves another game with Colin Kaepernick and to really kind of give Kaepernick another chance to prove whether he should be the starter. Well, the 49ers won that game too. and the rest is history. He never got his job back. But to answer your question, yeah, there was a lot of behind the scenes discussion between Alex and his wife about whether he should push it. I mean, his eyes were wide open in all of this. He knew that Harbaugh had picked Kaepernick in the second round. This was the hand-picked quarterback in 2011. And he didn't want to give Kaepernick the toehold. He didn't want to give Harbaugh and the 49ers the toehold to, allow them to displace him and put Kaepernick in.
Because he was playing amazing. He was playing elite at that time.
Yeah, I forget what the stats were in that Rams game. I'm not sure he had an incompletion in that game. And if he did, he only had one. So he wasn't giving them an excuse to take him out, which was his whole point. He wanted to prove to them that he could be the starter. And again, going back to our first conversation, they knew that team was special. And Joe Staley has said that they were going to go to the Super Bowl no matter who was there at quarterback. And Smith obviously wanted to be the guy. He didn't want to give them an excuse to take him out. And unfortunately, the concussion provided exactly that. And I should say that Smith and Staley are close friends, really good friends. And so I asked Staley, I mean, are you sort of resentful that this happened to your buddy? And he was frank in saying, yeah, they used that concussion as an excuse, but I don't hold it against Colin Kaepernick at all. I mean, Colin Kaepernick came in, they gave him a chance to be the starter, and he ran with it, literally ran with it, and took them to the Super Bowl. So I don't want it to sound like there was any Cap versus Alex issues. Again, that goes back to how healthy that locker room was. There wasn't any of that. I think a lot of guys were disappointed that their buddy Smith, the guy that they had kind of come into the league with, didn't get his chance, never got his chance with the 49ers. But again, there was no resentment towards Kaepernick.
Yeah. And again, Alex Smith's still going.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to win comeback player of the year, but he should. You go back and you see what he's been through, and you can even talk about his time with the Chiefs, training Mahomes, just what an amazing human and teammate and quarterback in the league. Now let's jump quickly to today's team a little bit more. You have a chapter that is titled, and I think it's great, The Joker, Jimmy G, and a Revamped D. The rhyming hits home with me, by the way. But a two-part question. The Joker obviously is George Kittle.
Right.
Going back through we spend a lot of time with the 49ers Rush podcast on the draft. I had never heard, and this is kind of problem with draft GMs that stay at home and watch film. You don't get the backstory on a lot of these players. I never knew he was labeled as a frat boy, party guy, and football wasn't one of his the question of if he was going to be about football for George Kittle. That's news to me. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to his personality, and you can probably recognize it in just how gregarious he is. It's almost like I don't want to compare humans to animals, but he's sort of like a black lab or a retriever. It's just full of energy and sort of doesn't know how to focus that energy. But when you get him in the right hands, like a hunter or a bomb sniffing dog, and kind of hone that energy to one end, it's all going to one purpose. So I think that was part of the issue early on at Iowa. He was a bit of a social butterfly. He was partying and he was, according to the coaches, not really focusing in on being a tight end. The other part of George Kittle is that he was a late bloomer. I mean, he's like a skeleton when he arrives there. They weren't sure whether he's a tall wide receiver or a tight end. And even I remember talking to John Lynch about that, coming in as a rookie in 2017. I don't know what he weighed. It was sub 245 though. And so the point is that the George Kittle that we see today isn't physically the George Kittle who we just saw, we're seeing 3 years ago. So, the 49ers made, John Lynch is open in saying this, is that, they love George Kittle and they love that they got him in the 5th round, but he was a 5th round pick. So it's not like they knew exactly what was coming. So George Kittle has sort of become the George Kittle that we know only recently. And that's why he fell to the 5th round.
And man, I know you've been with the 49ers for 17 years now, but I can, I tried take it a step back and look at, I can't think of a team in the NFL in recent memory where the tight end is kind of not only the face of the franchise, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo's there, but where they're kind of the chief piece on offense or defense that kind of characterizes the entire team. We've had Vernon Davis, Dwight Clark, obviously, but they were kind of surpassed by other players that were on the roster, Joe Montana, all that stuff. Can you think of any other team? Because I'm racking my brain. I can't think of any other team that's even close to having a tight end as their face of the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Mike Ditka was that with the Bears. I mean, you would have to go back a long time. But it's exactly what this is becoming. And this isn't in the book. This is only something that has sort of come to me in recent weeks. But I wrote that chapter about Justin Smith lighting all of Joe Staley's furniture on fire. Well, back then that became Justin Smith's locker room for years and years, from 2008 until he retired in 2015. Justin Smith ran that locker room. He ran the weight room. He ran the locker room. He ran the social club. All of that was Justin Smith. When he left, it went to Joe Staley. He became the guy in that locker room. And the disposition of the locker room changed, with the two personalities. Staley's a little bit isn't quite as rough and tumble, I should say, as Justin Smith was. But now that Staley's gone, there's sort of this opening, and the guy who's filling it is George Kittle. I don't think there's any question about it, and I think that's really good, because, like what we said before, I mean, he's just full of energy. He loves people. He's a great teammate, and he's smart. He's intelligent, and that's what you need. You need all of those things in order to be the guy. And so he just signed a lucrative long-term deal. Again, I think that's a good reason why this team is going to have stability. I mean, you never know with injuries, anything like that. But, the fact that George Kittle is signed for the long term, that he's kind of taking hold. He's not running from the fact that this team needs a locker room leader. I think that's all is excellent. And I'm really happy for him. And I think it means good things for this team for years to come.
I love it. And, before we let you go, I got to get you one question real quick off of the book. Let's say hypothetically you had to write an extra chapter based on the 2020 season. What would be that one topic that you feel like just has to be talked about? I feel like there's a lot with injuries and whatever else. I hate to put you on the spot like this. But what do you think has been the overarching theme of through 7 weeks, in the 2020 season? What would stand out to you?
Yeah, it's just what I was talking about. It's sort of, this idea that, okay, we just came off the Super Bowl. We know we're a very good team, but the tenor, each season has its own theme. And so you can't expect just to kind of roll out of 2019 and take off with 2020. I mean, it changed. I mean, the personalities. I mean, losing Joe Staley was a big deal for this team. With Trent Williams coming in, with a new right guard, they've had several guys play center. It's all about sort of figuring out who you are and figuring out what that identity is. And I think the 49ers, we've seen this happening in the last couple of weeks. They did figure it out. And they might need to send Brian Flores and the Dolphins a thank you card, because it really was a bucket of cold water to the face of this team. And they got their together right after that. And, it's going to be hard with all these injuries for sure. It's not as talented a team as it was last year. But, yeah, there's also something to be said about that. You figure out how to win, and figure out how to win aside from talent. And I think the 49ers have learned how to do that, and they're kind of learning what their calling card is. And it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, I've been saying for weeks that if they just come out of this bye week 5-5, and then maybe Mostert comes back, and Jeff Wilson comes back, and Jordan Reed comes back, Ben Garland comes back, that's a nice little shot in the arm to a team that's already kind of proven to itself that it can win without those guys. they're the team all of a sudden that you don't want to face in the month of December.
I love it. I love it. With us is Matt Barrows. You can follow him on Twitter, which you probably already do, at Matt Barrows. And he just put out the book, which you've got to go get. This is a must for any 49ers fan out there. It's titled If These Walls Could Talk. It is available at triumphbooks.com. I'm going to put a link in the video and the podcast where you can just click there and go there. It's incredible. I knocked it out in 2 days because it was so good I couldn't put it down. This is a must. And also he writes for The Athletic, which love your written work over there as well, Matt. Just want to say thank you for your time, not only today but for the book, because it's incredible and it changed the way I saw a lot of my favorite 49ers over the time. So just want to say thanks, Matt.
Well, John, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for all the great questions. Obviously, you did read it very carefully, so I thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir. All right, man, that was really cool. I'm such a nerd, obviously I was there for the interview yesterday, but man, just listening to that again as I edited it and listening to it again now, just incredible. We are a part of a rich franchise. I have friends that belong to other teams. They don't have they have to look up to Vinny Testaverde. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Vinny, but the just huge amounts of personalities and stars and Hall of Famers and all the things that the 49ers have. We're spoiled. We're so spoiled. A 4-3 year is a down year. We understand that, right? Like, nobody's happy with where the 49ers are. We feel like we're still in a hole. But whenever you step back and look at things, most teams don't go through this. Most teams don't do this. Even some of the proud, look at the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have 2 playoff wins in about 30 years. I don't know, man. I don't know. But, man, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Leave some feedback. Now, these take a lot of work to set up and you get going. But, man, I'm all about promoting the best 49ers content out there, period. That's just what I am. It's not about me. It's about the content. And go buy that freaking book. Go buy the book. Tag Matt Barrows on Twitter and tell him thanks for showing up, because it's incredible. We support our own. That's who we are. Go do that. But I want to say thank you guys for all the support. Hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, join the Countdown crew. And again, we're still doing your rate. Leave the 5-star rating on iTunes and leave your story with how you became part of the faithful. We're going to continue sharing those. Those have just been incredible. We'll be back tomorrow. Patreon video, all defensive breakdown will be in the morning. We did the offensive one this morning. If you haven't joined us on Patreon, patreon.com. 49ers Rush Podcast. It's $8 a month. You get every single play that there is. It's a bargain, I'll tell you that. But we will be back with you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for all the support. And until then, stay strong, faithful.